Welcome to Frame of Reference, informed, intelligent conversations about the issues and challenges facing everyone in today's world. In-depth interviews to help you expand and inform your frame of reference. Now here's your host, Raul Labreche.
Well, welcome everyone. Welcome again to another exciting, scintillating, incredibly intellectually stimulating episode. How did I do? No, okay. Frame of Reference, Profiles in Leadership. And I'll tell you lately, folks, I've said this before in several of the introductions to episodes that I have been really, I don't know if there's something in the air or God is just looking favorably on me as, her servant. I don't know what gender and God and we don't understand that whole concept. But anyways, I would like to say that there's something going on because the quality of the guests that have been seeking me out lately has made my job so incredibly enriching and easy because I don't have to spend all kinds of time going, I should have. Lately, I've had, I think you're like the sixth one, Lisa, that's just reached out to me either personally or through an agent. And I've read the information on yes, this is exactly the kind of person I want to talk to. So, and today is another one of those days. So keep the roll going. Those of you that are into praying, keep those cards and prayers coming because I will take however this is coming about. I'm all with it. I'm on it, as they say. But today's guest is a woman that I've just found out about, which is the other exciting thing about who knew these people were here, right? Is Lisa Ekman is with me. And Lisa comes from an incredibly, I think, fascinating background. And I'm going to let you describe it, Lisa, because I could do it, I think, but I want people to hear it from your words. You are a person with a very unique vantage point. And why is that?
That is because I spent more than 20 years in Washington, D.C. as a Democratic advocate and lobbyist, working for a variety of different people. I worked for a political appointee at the tail end of the Clinton administration at one of the agencies. And then I worked for a couple of different Democratic senators, including Senator Ted Kennedy of Massachusetts, which I think most people have heard of. Mm-hmm. And then I worked for a number of different nonprofits and government contractors. And I used to say that I bled blue. I was a very, very dedicated Democratic warrior. And I did so until COVID. And I had what I would term an awakening. Many people might have say it was my red pill moment. Although I would say I know I don't fit neatly into any category anymore, but where I really became aware of the fact that I had been brainwashed, programmed, and indoctrinated into what I call the progressive cult, and that I deprogrammed myself, woke up, and decided to share my story with the world because of the grave danger I saw that our great republic faced and still faces today as we see the growing division, the growing political violence that is going on in our country. And so I wrote a book called Deprogramming Democrats and Uneducating the Elites to share my story. And now I am going out and talking to anyone who will have a conversation with me because I feel like that is the solution to reuniting our country, uniting our country again, and getting people to begin to see each other as fellow humans, fellow children of the Creator, as opposed to enemies and dehumanized.
Yeah, the otherization of both sides of the equation. It's interesting because the rhetoric that you're using, the cult kind of deprogramming, all those things are things that are readily wielded by the liberal side of the equation in our national discussions towards the MAGA community, right? It's very much of a people are purposing and repurposing the vocabulary in ways that are, sometimes it's like, well, what does that word even mean anymore? If you can say it means this and you can say it means this, a lot of myself included, I think we sit back going, okay, well, that's interesting. Let's talk more about that, right? Let's unwrap that.
And I should say I don't disagree that there are people who are exhibit cult-like behavior on both sides. I think the biggest thing is if someone is unwilling to question in any way what their leaders are saying and doing, that's when you have to start asking questions. And the reason why my book is Deprogramming Democrats is because that's where I come from, and that's the side that I know, and that's the how I know what techniques were used, how I know why they were effective, and those kind of things.
Right.
But that is not to say that there isn't cult-like behavior on the right as well.
Right.
And I personally have, since my awakening, rejected the left-right dichotomy that they force us into sort of taking sides on. And what I look at it as is an establishment who has been corrupted,
right,
and that has taken the power away from we the people, as envisioned by our founders.
Right.
And the divide and conquer strategy, which is in full display in many ways, but left versus right is a very clear example of them. And so I think, the reason why a lot of people on the left fail to see, I think, themselves with cult-like behavior is that there's no charismatic leader. When you think of a cult, you think of, Jim Jones, you think of Charles Manson, you think of and evil but charismatic leaders. Right. And with the progressive cult, what they worship is authority, and what they idolize is the expert. And I think if you look at what happened during COVID, it's a very clear example of that cult-like behavior, that scientism that is religious almost in nature, and their unwillingness to question the leaders when they tell them something is true or ask them to do something.
Yeah, I think that was one of the fascinating things when I was reading some of your background materials, is that you got to that moment where you began to want to question and found that there really was no room for a person that wants to question. That was you don't get to step out of line. You don't get to be the nail that stands out from the other nails and not get pounded on pretty hard in those circuits, which is really interesting when you think about it from the standpoint of the liberal community. The liberal, history has been one of liberal arts, right? The wanting to further education, wanting to further the advancement of the human being, overall. I went to a small liberal arts college in Wisconsin. It was very liberal and very conservative at the same time, right? But the idea was, question, learn how to think, learn how to ask good questions. And now in today's, the people that ask good questions are put at the back of the bus. There's something wrong. Why would you even question that? And it's like, because it needs to be questioned. So it needs to be. So we lost that somewhere along the line. So I think we can talk. We're going to talk. We're going to keep the format because, Galdern, I'm a rigid son of a gun from Wisconsin, and it's hard to teach an old Milwaukee boy new tricks. But here we go. So
here we go.
I'd like to start with my favorite things. It kind of gets things loosened up and gets us to know each other, gets the people that maybe already got offended by something either one of us said to just relax a minute and remember we all have a favorite kind of pizza. Okay, so let's just get there for a moment, shall we? So let's start. This is my favorite things. It's Rorschachtian. I throw something out, you say butterfly, whatever. That's fine. There's no right or wrong answers unless you think that the answer you give might offend somebody you care deeply about, and then you can say, but remember, so to qualification.
There would be no caveats in my answers.
Okay, good. I appreciate that. My answers are usually not caveats either. I just result in some kicks in my shin from my wife under the table at an occasion, and I deserve them. So first question is, do you have a favorite pizza?
A favorite pizza? I grew up in Chicago, so if I did not say deep dish, I'd be, in trouble. And And the original Uno's, downtown Chicago. That would be my favorite.
The original Uno's, did you say?
Yes.
Okay.
Pizzeria Uno's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there a particular toppings that you liked on it too?
We used to do a lot of pepperoni and sausage.
Pepperoni and sausage. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rocky Rococo's in Madison kind of took their deal from Numero Uno's because their deep dish pizza, their sausage and pepperoni one was like, people came from miles around for some good old, yeah. So I hear it. And when they're all sloppy and the cheese is just dripping all over the place, it's hard to beat that for a good old. What would we call them? Stomach bombs. They're stomach bombs.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get up and run a mile after you eat a slice of that, but it's delicious. You know?
Right. Yeah. What's wrong with him? He ate an entire deep dish pizza. So, how about a favorite? How about a favorite book? Do you have a favorite book?
Oh goodness. I have so many different favorite books.
Okay.
That's part of my challenge. You know, books were my constant companion growing up. That one is going to be a hard one for me to really pick. But I think for this purposes right now in my life, and I think I should say if you ask me on a different day, it might be a different book.
That's fair.
But
That's fair.
The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Say that
familiar
again?
with that one?
No.
The Four Agreements?
The Four Agreements.
By Don Miguel Ruiz. He is a Nagual, which is a shaman of the Toltec. The book is about the fact that we're born into agreements that our society has, that our family has, that define who we are, that often lead us to create our own misery and creating 4 new agreements for ourselves that will help us to alleviate. It was the book I read after I woke up that allowed me to begin to explore my own faith and my own connection to the Creator.
Okay.
That allowed me to let go of the fear once I did get my faith or establish my own faith, and allowed me to wake up the way that I did. So that's why that's my favorite book today.
Gotcha. Well, it sounds like it was an essential resource, if nothing else, right? So how about, do you have a favorite poem, as long as we're on a literature cycle here?
That I actually don't have.
No, I don't.
I don't have a favorite poem to share.
Poetry isn't something that it used to be. People had, I think, more of a connection to poetry. Maybe we've lost that somewhere along the line too. You know, I know I was taught a lot of poetry in school, so I couldn't probably tell you a full poem of anything, but I remember Leaves of Grass, being something that really kind of impacted me a lot, and it was bits and pieces of it here and there, kind of jazz. But yeah, no, that's good. We're good. No problem. How about favorite music artist? I'm on an artist thing right now. Sorry.
Yeah. So I was a big Deadhead.
Ooh.
So
Jerry Garcia? Really?
Jerry Garcia. Yeah, I saw quite a few shows while he was still with us. Yeah. Okay.
You would enjoy this story. My wife and I, one of my first jobs was as the assistant director of the Wisconsin Union Theater at UW-Madison. And while there, this was when the Clinton campaign was going around the nation, and they did a Rock the Vote episode at the Union Theater. So the press team comes in ahead of time and hits me right away and said, "You have to find a professional makeup artist for us, because we need them to be able to get Vice President Gore and President Clinton ready for this interview on stage, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, yeah, I've got like 6 of them I can call up immediately, right? So, but just did what they asked, right? Got and asked my wife, "Are you coming to see this event?" And she's like, "Yeah, I guess so." I said, "Well, you're going to have to be a makeup artist, okay?" Because I knew she had done makeup at least for shows and the like. So I'm going to have you do makeup for them. Well, and at this time she was a staunch Republican, so to ask her to do do, Bill Clinton and Al Gore's makeup that was a real test of love, let me tell you. So, and she agreed to do it though. And the long and the short of the story is she came in, the woman that was handling President Clinton said, okay, here's the deal. You're a professional makeup artist. If anyone asks you, you're a professional makeup artist. You got it? So it's like, okay, yeah. So went and did the makeup. And as she's doing makeup, they're interviewing Clinton and asking him all these different questions. And they said something about, so how does it feel, Mr. Clinton, to be in the city of the deadheads? And she could tell being up close to him, he was just kind of like struggling. What the hell does that mean? And she whispered into his ear, Grateful Dead. So he's like, oh yeah, Grateful Dead. That's a great band. Blah, blah, blah. Just went right on. So, see, you saved his presidency right there. You saved his presidency. So you're responsible now. I'm sorry, sweetheart. That's the way it is. But
it's all your fault. It's all her fault.
Pretty much. Everyone. Thankfully, we lost the pictures of that, so no one could probably prove that she actually did do that makeup. So, but I don't know. I think my mother-in-law lost them. She couldn't believe that she had done makeup for him. So, how about is there a favorite place that you like to go to de-stress?
My garden.
Your garden? What kind of garden?
Mm-hmm. So we actually have 3 different gardens. 2 of them are more flower and herb gardens, and then the other one is a vegetable and fruit garden.
Wonderful.
So we grow on our farm. We grow our own fruits and vegetables, and then a lot of medicinal and culinary herbs as well. And so
cool.
I de-stress with the plants and nature.
They're right up there with dogs, aren't they, for de-stressing capabilities? So, yeah. Wow.
They are. And my second, answer probably would have been the couch with the dog. Is a good place to de-stress.
Yeah. My favorite time of the week is the weekend when I have a dog on my lap and a dog on the couch next to me. And yeah, it's I always think, why can't I just do this for a living? I'd be really good at this. So, but how about last question, and we can move on. But is there a place or a memory, something that you can think of that is one of a favorite memory to go to, or a favorite, if something happens and you're reminded of that, and it's just one of those things you go to and you relish that moment again and again and again, and it's something like that in your life where you know that it's something that just really impacted you, and maybe at the time you didn't even realize how impactful it was, but now as we get older, I think we do have, all of us seem to have those moments where it's just like, just walking in the forest and the sound of the leaves under my feet is just so comforting because I think of walking with my grandpa or whatever.
I think there is a memory I have. I was out in Colorado and I was hiking alone in the Rockies, out west of Denver, and I crested over the top of a little rise, and there was this huge valley full of wildflowers, and all of the wildflowers were covered by butterflies. And as soon as I stepped over the rise, they all took flight and flew directly at me and up over the top of my head, and every color of the rainbow. And it's one of those times where I felt so insignificant. Anytime I'm on the side of a mountain, I feel very insignificant, yet at the same time so connected to divinity and the creator because of the beauty, and look at the wonder and the awe of it. And this was in 1995.
Oh, wow.
So that was 30 years ago. And I do from time to time, it just replays, and I just think, wow. Because one of the things about our current society that I notice is people are so disconnected from nature, and I think when you have experiences like that and it reconnects you, it's really powerful. So that is a memory that, just does In fact, not very long ago, a couple of days ago, I just was relating that story to someone for the very reason.
Okay.
But it just pulls me back. It makes me, feel the awe and the wonder in the universe.
Yeah. See the beauty, right? See the beauty, which is, I'd have to agree. I think we've lost the common connections of, isn't that a gorgeous sunset? Isn't that powerful to stand on the shores of, I remember growing up in Milwaukee and just going down to, we were like 4 blocks from Lake Michigan, so my mom's idea of a great Saturday or weekday, any day, was to, pack up some sandwiches in the radio flyer wagon and, pull us and whatever down in the wagon to the beach and hang out there for 3, 4, 5 hours. Right. And and something about that lake just rolling in and rolling in and rolling in. We don't realize at the time how that's connecting us to things way beyond us. And now there's just, everything is so bite-sized and, let's make sure it's just palatable and make sure we keep feeding the right markets. And boy. Okay, let's talk about that. The big thing, right? Tell me how did this happen to you? I know you talked about it in your summary, but what was the moment that you got unwoke or awakened from your wokeness, shall we say?
So it was a little bit of a process. So it wasn't all at once, but I think the very moment that it happened is when my partner, who was my boyfriend at the time, asked me a question. This was during COVID, and he and I were not on the same page about COVID. He, from the very beginning, was asking a lot of questions and questioning what they were telling us and all of that. And I was not. I was doing what I was supposed to and being very afraid and not questioning, what the government was telling me. And one of the things that I could not wrap my head around it. I started, I did disability policy advocacy in Washington. And so I spent a lot of time working with the Department of Health and Human Services, the National Institutes of Health, the CDC, all of these agencies that played the role in COVID. And so I said, but I was also doing all this research and nothing that they were saying was making sense to me based on what I was trying to find. I was trying to find the science to support what the government was doing, and I couldn't. And so I said to him at one point, I said, Jamie, that's his name. I said, Jamie, I just can't believe that they would do this to us, that they would do this to our country, to the world without data and evidence to support it. And he said to me, looked me right in the eyes, and he said, Lisa, if they'll poison our water, what won't they do? And he knew I already believed that. He knew, and this is a longer story that I want to be conscious of time and not go into, but my mom got very sick. She had cancer, stage 4, and I did a whole bunch of research to try to help her get better. And long story short, we changed her diet, got her to an naturopath, did all sorts of things, and she was cancer-free before they finished her first round of chemo. But she ended up dying from what I will call chemotherapy poisoning. Her kidneys shut down. So after one round of chemo, after 2 years of no cancer, even though her death certificate says cancer, which was not actually the cause of death, it was what they gave her to try to treat it. And when I was doing that research, I learned a lot about municipal water supplies and what's in them. And, fluoride just really isn't good for us. And no other country in the world gives it to us, but it's in our water. And they've since admitted that it can lead to lower IQ and calcify your pineal gland and all of these things. So I already believed that to be true. And I also know that water is the most essential thing to us. If we don't have it, we die. So if they'll poison that, what won't they do? And I had lived my life with a great deal of cognitive dissonance. I was able to sort of say, on the one hand, this, on the other hand, that, And those two things can't actually be true, but because experts told me they both are, I have to believe them.
Sure.
That's part of being a member of the cult.
Yep.
Well, this pushed my cognitive dissonance to the point where I could not hold those two ideas together anymore. If the agencies that are supposed to be protecting us and our health will allow fluoride to be put in our water, and the chlorine and the fact that the pharmaceuticals can't be filtered out, all the things about our water, then how can I believe that they are telling us the truth and protecting us in other ways? And it literally caused my brain to, for a moment, stop completely and then start working again, and allowed me to start asking questions. And then, as they say, I kind of, I said to him, well, the other thing that happened that was going on then that was really bothering me was the censorship that started really happening to conservative voices a lot, but also to the natural health practitioners I had started following after I had helped my mom. And I'm really a free speech absolutist. I believe that our rights, our freedom are all depending on our ability to question the government. And in fact, it's our responsibility to do that when we believe they are being corrupt or acting, not in our country's best interest. And when you start hearing the word disinformation coming from your government aimed at citizens, that's pretty scary. If you know anything about actual history, which I fear many young people do not anymore, the word disinformation should send shivers down your spine when the government is trying to get to tell you what is true and what is not. And so then Jamie said to me, well, if you don't believe me, prove me wrong. Go do the research. And I said to him, okay, I will. And then, as they say, I went down rabbit hole after rabbit hole, and my world shattered. Everything I thought was real and true was not. And it took me a number of years to pick the pieces up and try to figure out, without my identity as a democratic warrior, without my identity as, a liberal, lefty, who am I?
Right.
And if they could manipulate me and brainwash me the way that they did, how do I trust myself again? How do I trust anybody else?
Right.
So
how do I expect to be trusted? Right. So when I was purporting something that I believed was true and stood by it, I defined myself by it. How do I get others to trust me too? And that to me, in doing this podcast in particular, has been a fascinating, ongoing struggle. Is my goal, my objective, as God is my witness, my heart is to just have the facts, as many facts as I possibly can, to have the truth set before me. I want to be able to make an informed decision and critically think about things, but I want to see the facts. I don't want somebody showing me the facts that fit their ideology or fit their agenda, because I really don't think it's as much about Republicans and Democrats, nor has it been for quite a while. I think it's about one group of capitalists and another group of capitalists, and organizations that benefit a lot from the exposition of different themes, whatever you want to call them, I guess. We all get caught and vilified against one another, when really what most people want to do is just know the truth and have decent amount of respect, be respectfully treated, and be able to treat others respectfully, and to be able to ask questions. I want to live a life where I can just ask any question, and I completely agree with you when you say I will defend anyone's ability to speak and say and ask anything. Do not tell me that they don't have a right right to ask that just because you find it offensive, just because it's something that you think, that's been decided already. Why are you even asking that question? Because they need to ask the question. So let them ask the question. And when you talk about misinformation, right? Government misinformation. Oh yeah, my gosh. Why are we not all of us just going, warning, Will Robinson, warning? Because if that isn't a way of saying, and by the way, we will tell you how to think. Don't worry. You don't have to worry about thinking. We've got that all under control. That ought to be terrifying. And yet we're too busy fighting what you voted for who? And that we can't even unify.
We can't. The other thing is, though, and I think some people don't want to be responsible for deciding what the truth is.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people, it is kind of scary. I will tell you, when you come from a perspective of the government is going to help me figure out what's true, they're going to keep me safe, all of those things, to wake up and find out, you know what? Actually, no, they're not. I'm on my own here. I'm, and especially if you do not have any relationship with God or the creator, or no spiritual connection in that way, however someone wants to, look at that.
Right.
I'm not here to tell anyone what the right answer about that is, but your own connection to the creator, you get a lot of strength and a lot of love from that.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that and you place that trust and faith in the government and then it's gone, it's a very daunting thing.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who don't want to have that responsibility.
Yeah.
Freedom comes with a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And sadly, a lot of younger people in this country, I don't think they even understand what freedom is. Our government has gotten so bureaucratic and so in every decision that you are trying to make, that I think a lot of people don't really understand what it means to be free. And with that freedom does come a lot of responsibility. And taking accountability for one's actions is not high on the priority of a lot of people. I can't speak to the world. I can only really speak to this country because that's
right.
my experience, but I suspect it's true in other countries as well.
So what do you think it takes for a person who has lost faith in their institutions to trust anew? Because I think that's ultimately what is coming from this, or what will, I think, will have to arise from this. We've lost media that we used to trust. We've lost a commonality of socially acceptable or socially verifiable sources that will give us the true picture, or a true picture as possible, and explain the uncertainties when they exist. Because science will tell you. I remember during COVID having discussions with one of our local physicians here. It was a guy that had been a Vietnam medic back in the day, and became a full-fledged doctor, ran a GP practice out of good old Sauk Prairie, Wisconsin for 47 years. Was at the point in his career where he was giving birth to the great grandbabies of kids that he birthed when he first started. And when I would ask him about COVID in the midst of all that, and I'd say, what about this? What about this? And he said, well, we don't have enough data points yet to answer that. We think this is what's going on right now. And he would tell me from reading New England, Journal of Medicine, what the current trends are, current research studies that were going on, and the numbers that they were going to have to reach before they would really be able to have any kind of conclusions that would be meaningful. And I really appreciated the fact that he was one of the only people in the scientific community anywhere that I was hearing that was saying that type of message. It's, we're just not sure yet. And the reality was people didn't want that message. They wanted, yes, you can't go out without a mask, or don't worry about a mask, that's stupid. There was no room for, well, wait a minute, let's just stop and think about this for a minute. There just wasn't. And we still have continued with that kind of mindset. So what is it going to take for us to be able to get an organization or a common source of truth, of factual information that isn't biased, doesn't have somebody's sponsorship attached to it, or some viewer approval rating that says, oh yeah, don't talk about that, talk about this behind it? Is that possible anymore?
I struggle with that. I'll be very honest. I really, really do. I think the sad part is, I think the best thing that anyone can do right now is provide all the data that they can. And, I think we're all going to have to make up our own minds is the thing. Because everything I think right now is so tainted. We've lost faith in every institution, and rightfully so. I understand that people want certainty. I also understand that people want to go sometimes to the doctor and they don't want to hear about their lifestyle choices that may be contributing to their problem. They want a pill to fix it. Well, the truth is those pills don't fix it. I will say that I do not have a very positive view of what I call our medical pharmaceutical complex. I think, unfortunately, most doctors are now just very highly paid drug dealers. That's what they are. It's a cartel. And they have captured our regulatory agencies. And so I think one of the things that we're going to have to do is break the logical fallacy of appeal to authority and the expert. If a doctor cannot tell you, can you describe to me the risk of me getting this disease, or the risk versus the cost-benefit analysis of this treatment versus that treatment. There are things that I think people are going to have to take responsibility more for deciding what is true. One of the things I talk about in my book is that you are just as qualified as a doctor to look at a study and decide whether or not something is effective. You can read the results. You can look at the study. Could you complete the study and write the paper? Maybe not. Maybe so, but maybe not. But you are just as qualified to do that. And we have to start believing in our own ability to decide what's true. And we have to stop placing faith in the experts in a way that is unquestioning. And that's not an easy thing to say. But I think we also have to very strongly advocate for getting the money out of our science.
Yeah.
We have to figure out how to do that. I talk about this too in the book. A scientist is supposed to not have a vested interest in the outcome of his or her experiment. The scientific method relies on the fact that the only thing we're looking for is truth. Mm-hmm. We're looking for, does this experiment support my hypothesis? Does the data and evidence support it? Can it be replicated? And if not, then I need a new hypothesis. Well, if I'm a scientist working for a pharmaceutical company, my hypothesis is always going to be that the drug is going to work, because my very salary depends upon it, and my future in my industry depends upon it. So transparency. If a pharmaceutical company does a study and it shows that their drug is going to kill people, maybe we need to require them to publish the results of every single study that they do, for example. Mm-hmm. And I'm picking on the pharmaceutical industry, but this could be applied across everything. Right. Right. I personally have a big passion about reforming our food, our agriculture. The same companies that make the pesticides that kill life shouldn't be the companies that own our seeds. We need to be having conversations about that, and we need to get the money out of the science. And I think transparency may be the first way to do that. And so, again, I think making sure people understand, here's my post-wake up favorite saying to people is, question everything and follow the money. And if the money became transparent, I think we'd have a very different view of how so many things operate in our country and in the world. If we can get the money out of science. So, for example, instead of giving NIH giving money out to companies to do research, have scientists who get a salary, who have absolutely no vested interest in the outcome, and have those scientists, this is just an example. I'm not really for more government. I'm for more returning control to communities and states. But as an interim step, maybe it is that the scientists can't work for the company who's trying to get an approval. I think the other thing that happened, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has talked about this, is that we have allowed companies to just sort of use chemicals and introduce them without proving they're safe first. And there's something called, I'm forgetting the law right now, but it's a concept that's generally regarded as safe for grass. And there are so many chemicals that get introduced without looking at, okay, maybe this chemical is kind of safe by itself, but what happens when it gets mixed with all these other chemicals that are already in the environment and all those kind of things. Right. And I'm focusing on this aspect because I think one of the biggest institutions that we have lost our belief in is science.
Yeah.
It's been co-opted. And as we move forward, we have an extremely unhealthy society. And I would say that's true physically, spiritually, and emotionally, mentally. We're very unwell. And part of that is, I think, due to the food we eat, the environment we're in, all of those things. And in order to address it, we have to have some faith in the science, I think. So I guess what I would say, in the beginning, what we have to do is make all of the data available, and people are going to have to decide for themselves until we can rebuild some institutions where we take the money out of the equation.
That's honestly one of my greatest hopes for AI. I've been working on a project actually with Anthropic's version of AI, Claude, which Claude is wonderful. If you're going to try some AI, try Claude. Claude's named after Claude Shannon, the father of modern information and science technology. But the whole concept of could we use AI and its large language model as a way to just go out and get all of the information about a question and bring it back into a digestible summary that we could at least begin to then have informed questions to go beyond that first question. And it seems very hopeful. I think there is a way to do it. There's a lot of problems to work out, but I think you're right. We need something that says, okay, just take all the, bullshit out of the equation, and let's just look at science, real science, not, Quaker Oats funded science or whatever, pick on whoever you want. Because that is, we're tainting that. We're tainting any kind of religiosity. I mean, there's so much, that is built into the Christian faith right now that is paid for by various organizations. Like, wait a minute, I have to remind friends of mine that it's just like, yeah, but he's not Jesus, he's not Jesus. I don't know if you know that or not, but he's not Jesus. Okay. And so you get that whole thing going on of people are so willing to let their truth be co-opted. And by letting that happen, I don't know. I don't think there's a way back to epistemological, shared epistemology unless we can find a way to unfragment that thinking that says, I will only believe something if it comes from this source or this tribe or this site. That just is never going to solve anything. We have to get to a point where we have a shared resource that all of us can say, okay, all right, well, what's that have to say? Well, it doesn't agree with what okay, well, let's ask some other questions, but keep going from the same pool. Okay, so at least we're not drinking fluoridated water and whatever else might be the soup du jour from some company.
Yeah, and I also think the other thing that we have to do to go along with that is to rebuild our faith in each other.
Yeah.
And I think that starts from having more face-to-face interactions with people and rebuilding our sense of community.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge. I think, community started sort of dying before COVID, and COVID was some nails in the coffin. It's a lot easier, it's a lot easier to vilify someone that you only see online or that you never even meet, and, a fewer people go to church, and you used to know all your neighbors from church or the civic organization if you were in one of those, or you were on the bowling league, or you had the dinner club or whatever it was.
Right.
And
all that went away.
Those things all went away.
Yeah.
And so, and then our schools have really been indoctrinating people and have been used. When I started doing research on education for the book, I've spent a lot of time in school. I have a law degree, a master's in social work, and have an undergraduate. So that's a lot of time in school. Sure. And I was really shocked when I started doing some research about what actually goes on campuses these days. And it really isn't about teaching people how to think. It's about teaching people what to think and making sure that they are not exposed to things that might interrupt the message. And that message is generally not supportive of our American experiment and our Constitution and our system. And so I think, we have these young people, especially, the young people are the future. So we have to worry about what they believe and how they're going to think. And they graduate often never having really to confront any opinions that are different than their own. And really being taught that they are morally superior. They know better. They're now the experts. They're credentialed. And that people who don't think the way that they do are bad people. Yeah. And they don't get exposed to different opinions. And so I think we have to figure out how to overcome that. And part of that is, putting down the devices and taking the screens out of between people and, getting face to face.
Talk to that person across the booth from you.
And having conversations, with people that you don't agree with. Yeah. And not, not taking it personally and, figuring out that it's okay to agree to disagree, and that someone not thinking like you is not a moral failing on that part. So it's funny because the left always talks about diversity. They like diversity of everything except diversity of ideas.
That's dangerous. That diversity thinking. That's tough. That's really hard. So, there's
I used to think the left used to be a big tent. And they could agree to disagree, and that really disappeared over time. I feel like now what I call it in the book is there's a need for ideological conformity, and that falls right into the cult-like thinking. Right. If you don't agree exactly with us, then you're a bad person.
My dad, after he died, I found he had carried a little folded up piece of paper that he had hand typed, but he had to have the fairly long little quote, so he had it folded up, nice little piece of typing paper, and in his wallet that he'd carried for years, who knows how long, and it was a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson that I'm paraphrasing it, but the essential spirit of it was the veracity, the vehemence of my opponent's argument convinces me that I am perhaps a little bit wrong, and he is perhaps a little bit right. And I thought, boy, that's, I'm glad I had a dad that thought that was an important enough thing to remember. They carried it around in his wallet because it we have lost that in many, many ways. And it is essential to understand that. Adam Mizell was on the show with me a few weeks ago, and Adam is the founder of an organization called U.S. United. And their whole effort is he basically got into a tour bus and they went across the country all the way out to the West Coast. And I'm not sure if he's coming back from there or if he's just paused for a while. But his whole thing is they go out on this tour bus essentially to small communities and start trying to help them build community projects together, get community centers revitalized, get just educational coalitions established, and their whole thing is purple, and that it came about. Purple is the color because it's blue and red combined, and he found throughout the country, everywhere he went, that there were about 15% of the people that were just radical right. President Trump says something, it is absolute gospel word. And then there was the radical left that were this, woke everything and don't you dare question anything that's said by X, Y, and Z people because they are scientifically whatever, right? That whole thing. But 70% of the people, by and large, 70% were right in the middle that just wanted to be able to have a dialogue and get some questions answered and understand things more. And they just didn't feel like there was anywhere that they could do that because they didn't know who to talk to anymore, right? Everything's become so polarized. And so, don't say that. You'll probably get them upset if you say something about that. Well, goodness gracious, we got to be able to somehow talk, right?
Yeah, I think we do. And I think that that's part of it. I think social media has played a big role in this. I think that those 15% on each side that you're talking about feel like they are a much larger majority than they are a majority and much larger than they actually are because they are in these social media echo chambers. Yeah. So they think so many more people think like they do. And I think the cancel culture that social media created makes the, let's say 30% of the people who might be sort of left-leaning but not in that 15%,
right,
feel uncomfortable speaking up. I do hear people who are on the left but not in the cult, so to speak, will say, I kind of agree with you, but I can't say that because then my entire community will disappear.
Right. Right.
And so I think we do need to do that. In person is part of the best way to do it. But I also think people's lives are just so busy, that it's hard to figure out, and our economic situation for so many people is so challenging also because of inflation and the devaluation of the dollar and all of that, how do people have the time to do those things? And I don't know if it's just me, and I know this happens as you get older, but it just feels like I blink and a day is gone now. Or and COVID made this much worse. I think it sort of eliminated some of the normal markers of time passage that we used to have. Yeah. But it's like, how are we almost to the end of 2025? I don't understand. Where did it go? Yeah. And so within that context, how do you encourage people to get together in community? And the other thing that I think is really important as we think about that is figuring out ways to do it that don't cost people money, because so many people don't have money to, spend. And, one of the things that I really realized when I moved out to the country and I've met a lot of very different people than I used to be associating with in Washington, $10 really doesn't mean a lot to some people. And so if you just say, oh, well, it's just $10, well, that might be lunch on the last day of the month for them, or it might be, the prescription copay they have to pay, or the new pair of shoes they need. And I think churches used to play a much bigger role. And unfortunately, a lot of churches seem to have now become corporations instead of actual philanthropic organizations that do work for the betterment of the community. And I am not bad-mouthing churches. There are great churches out there,
Right.
but for every great church, there's an LLC who is getting a lot of money and not giving a lot back to the community. So supporting churches and other organizations to play a bigger role, having community picnics and things like that, where every church member can contribute if they can, but doesn't feel like they have to in order to attend, are just things that we need, I think, can think about in terms of how do we, because if we can't get to a place where we begin to trust one another again, it's going to be really hard to get to a place where we can trust our institutions again as well.
Yeah.
I have optimism, though. I do. So I see that. I know it's like heavy, but it's the truth. It's the facts that I just see so little connection between humans anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is the root of so much of our malaise as a society, of our inability to, divide and conquer is one of the oldest control strategies ever. And they have done everything they can to divide us in every way possible. Left versus right, man versus woman, black versus white, gay versus straight, any way that they can highlight our division. And if we can work to get people focused on those things we have in common and the things that unite us, I think that's where we can begin to see a turnaround. And I think it's imminently and eminently possible.
Agreed. I think there is a yearning that goes way beyond anybody's corporate bank account and is way more powerful. We just need to activate it. We need to be open to activating it. And so we need to be willing to wake up from our wokeness. So, or our conservative security, whatever is, going on, that put your faith in each other. Because I really think we need like band of brothers, kind of mentality. We're in a war, people. And this war is not against Democrats and Republicans. It's a war against haves and have-nots. So let's try to get it together here, have-nots, and realize that, we could do a lot of good if we just unite and do things that really matter to people, like making sure they got that $10 at the end of the month that they need, and knowing them well enough to know that they need that $10 and not being afraid to say, well, here's $10. It's no big deal. Go ahead. Oh, thank you so much. No. Sometimes you'll give me $10. Oh, it'll be all right. Don't worry about it. So, right. That would be a nice world. It's a wonderful life. That's what we need. We need good old Bedford Falls again. So Lisa Ekman has been with me today, the author of Deprogramming Democrats and Uneducating the Elites, which I thought right there is like, wow, okay, you don't hear that type of message very often. So it's refreshing, I have to say, in a way. I'm so used to that sort of, rhetoric being used for the other side of the political spectrum, that to hear someone say deprogramming Democrats, not only is it alliteration, but it's makes you kind of wake up and go, huh? What? So it's been a pleasure talking with Lisa. How you escaped the progressive cult has been, we only touched a little bit on the very tip of that iceberg. So I do hope we can get together again at some time in the near future and continue the conversation. That would be wonderful.
That would be my pleasure. And if you don't mind, I can just say you can get my book on Amazon.
Oh, please, no. Dude, I was going to ask you, what else can people, how can they get a hold of you? How can they find out more?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's deprogrammingdemocrats.com. My book is on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And I am on X only as Deprogrammed Dem.
On X only as Deprogrammed. Okay.
Deprogram them, yeah. I say only because that's the only social media that I have. I got rid of all of it when I woke up because it was too toxic, and that's the only one I joined to get in. Yeah. Because when I joined, that was the only one that was free and open for speech. It was after Elon Musk purchased it. So at that time, everything else, YouTube, Instagram, Meta was all still censoring truth voice very heavily. So
I kind of wonder about that, don't you? It's just like, yes, you don't have to be afraid. If you know, just read and you'll know what's going on. Okay. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you. All people out there have enjoyed listening to the conversation and enjoyed talking with you as much as I've enjoyed talking with you. So, although they didn't get to ask the questions, so I feel a little bad about that, but I'll get over it. So, thanks so much. Say hello to your dogs for me, okay, too, and I'll give my dogs a hug from you, and you do the same. All right. So,
sounds great.
Thanks for listening, everyone, here on Profiles in Leadership, Frame of Reference. That's the backwards version of Frame of Reference, Profiles in Leadership. Take care.